Delighted to have ex-pro turned youth coach. We've got Mr. Stevie Campbell on the show. Stevie, thanks for coming on, mate.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me along. It's seriously a pleasure to be here.
Now, I'm looking forward to hearing your story, mate. We're going to go right back, like most people do in these sort of things. You started off at Downfield Boys Club. As someone who works closely in the coaching of young people now, what were your coaches like back when you were playing youth level?
Do you know what? A wee funny story on that maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I hadn't seen my coach for that time, because that would be, 80s, early 80s. Big United fan, he was a guy called Rob Stewart. But I was no long away from United, and I heard he'd turned 70. So I turned up at his door with a bottle of whiskey, and he was absolutely flabbergasted. But the reason I did it was he didn't realise at that time what he'd done for me for 8 years, teaching me from 8 years of age up to 16 before I signed for Dundee. And just the good habits, the discipline, but the work that they did behind the scenes. I mean, a guy called Ford Hackney. We're young kids, you didn't realise it. You just turn up, you play your games, mainly within the Dundee area, obviously. They were absolutely brilliant. Their dedication and the way that they looked after us was just amazing. So that's why, as I said, when he was 70, as I said, probably not seen him for 40 years, but I just thought, I need to go and see this guy and say thank you very much. And he had a tear in his eyes. It was a great day. Sat with him for hours and reminisced about with Downfield Boys Club days. It was great, absolutely great.
Superb. It just goes to show, obviously, the impact that they have on young players, and even people like yourself working with the young kids just now in years to come. It's obviously
totally, yes. It was someone that maybe I didn't realise at the time, but I was inbred in me, and I think I started coaching at 32 myself in the Livingston days, and then have done for the last 21 years. God, that makes us feel old. But
going back to, obviously,
it was a good upbringing, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, going back to those Downfield days, you grew up a Dundee fan. You signed for your boys' club at the age of 16. Do you remember how that all came about?
Yes, I do. I was in with them when I was 13, and I got I was going to say binned, but that's a Dundee word. I got released for them at 13 because it was too small. But that would be a good feature in the future, because I think I got released for them about 3 times as a coach and as a player, etc. But yeah, it was heartbreaking. And believe it or not, that whole Downfield team, everyone was a United fan bar me. I was the only one that turned up with my Dundee tackies on, etc. every day. And a lot signed for Dundee United as S forms. None of them really went on to make it. People like Grant Patterson, they did play for St Johnstone and some of the lower league teams, but nobody really made it big. As I say, I was there. We were all there about 6, 7, 8 years. And Dundee United, actually, believe it or not, came in for me the night after I'd signed for Dundee at 16. But being a big Dundee fan at the time, I don't think I would have chosen United anyway. It was just a shame that they did. They had a prosperous youth system at the time. Or sometimes thinks, what would they be like? But no, I went into Dundee just after 16. And Archie Knox was the manager. Jockey Scott was the coach. And I don't think I could have started with any two better, absolute, legends of football knowledge, etc.
Absolutely.
That was brilliant. Yeah, great days.
Do you remember your debut for Dundee?
I do. Yeah, I came on. Well, it was Love Street. It's no Love Street anymore, is it? That shows how long ago. It was 1986 February, and we beat St Mirren 2-1. Came on for Ray Stevens, who was a player that ended up going to France, and that a striker for Aberdeen. Absolutely fantastic player. I think Arsene Wenger signed him for. I was a team in France at Nantes or Nancy or something like that. Mm-hmm. But Troop we called him. He came off, and I came on. And it was brilliant because having obviously, I think, watched Dundee every single week, home and away, since I was 5 or 6, going with all my brothers, to suddenly, go and be on the pitch with my heroes. It was amazing. Boys like Bobby Glennie and all that. I was in awe a wee bit. I'm not going to lie. My full debut didn't come until a couple of weeks later. Funnily enough, at bloody Parkhead, players like Brian McClare and Frank McAvenny up front, and I think we only lost 2-1. And I actually lost my tooth that night, believe it or not. And true story, early on in the tackle with Paul McStay, and as we were walking off at the end of the game, we'd lost 2-1, just shaking hands with all the superstars. And I looked down and here was my tooth. That's a true story. I think it was Levine later says to me, well, you didn't run about much as a player, so there wasn't much to find, but a big, huge Parkhead, and here's me finding my tooth. back again. So it's a false of now, but no, great days. And obviously that was the year, as I say, that I played a few games towards the end of that year, and I was meant to play in that. I'll be on the bench anyway in that infamous Hearts Dundee game at Dens where, the one and only Albert Kidd come on and broke.
Yeah. We kind of talked about this off air before we started recording. Share the story, because you should have really featured in that team that day, shouldn't you?
Yeah, well, it's something that I didn't speak to too many people about, and not too many people know. I know even the Dundee fans out there, because Albert's, well, he's probably a bigger hero to Celtic fans, unfortunately, than he is to the Dundee fans, but an absolute gem of a boy. I remember just, as I say, it was 17 or something, played a few games, and Archie named the team. We trained at the NCR. There's only 2 subbies in the days, but he named the team on the Friday before the game. We were trying to get into Europe. If Motherwell had beat Rangers at Ibrox, we were going to be in Europe if we'd obviously beat Hearts, which we subsequently did. But I went in on the Saturday, no thinking I was playing, obviously, but somebody had mentioned this, that I should be on the bench. So wee girl Marie said to me when I went back at 2 o'clock to say, Marie, can I get a couple of tickets? Must have been from my brothers or something. She says, you better hurry up and get changed, Stevie. I said, well, I'm not getting changed because I'm not on the bench. She went, yeah, I done the team lines this morning, yeah. And she looked, and they'd been changed, and it was Albert Kidd. And the rest is history. So I hope there's not too many Hearts fans listening to this. As I said, I did wind big Craig up McGaffar for a good few years at United. I
bet that didn't go down very well.
I'm not sure he listened to the end of it by the time I reminded him of that day, because I know how sore that must have been. And I saw going up to the stand, obviously, when I wasn't stripped, and I was sat behind Wallace Mercer, and I saw the heartache after it, obviously, and didn't realise that, it would be Celtic and Rangers from then on in, and nobody else would win the league. But as I said to Craig at the time, a big gaffer, I don't think I would have come off the bench and scored 2 goals. So it would have been Hearts' league had Archie, changed his mind at the last minute. I think Albert, by all accounts, went in and persuaded him and said that he was the man to unlock that brilliant defence that it was, if you remember rightly. And he was right. He was right. So he's a hero in Dundee for that, and he's certainly a hero at Parkhead as well.
Your time at Dundee, Stevie, what was your highlights? I know you were part of the 92 league winning side as well, weren't you?
Well, I would say that probably was my highlight. I think I only played about 100 odd games. Had a lot of injuries, no making excuses. Could have been a better professional when I look back and the things that I taught the guys. Sometimes I would look back and say, we did have 10 managers in the 8 years that I was there. I don't think that's healthy. Dundee were very much up and doing at that time. First managers were, as I say, Archie Knox, Jockey Scott, but even they moved on. Archie went to Aberdeen to join Alec Ferguson, and then Jockey moved on a year later, to go the same route. He was an Aberdeen legend as well as a Dundee legend. Two absolutely fantastic people to work for. Archie was quite scary. I think I'm still scared of him now when I see him, if I'm being honest. I remember him telling my mum and dad at 17 that I would come here and greet him one day. He was right, I did at 17. I was wanting to go part-time as well. I asked him in a pre-season tour of Germany, can I go part-time? He says, what do you mean? I says, well, I look at Morris Marples across the road. He's just done a degree. United are such a good team at the time. He's such a good player. So if it worked for him, it could work for me. And I think I just remember that, just saying, sign full-time, or I think the second word was off at that time. So I got the pen and signed full-time. So yeah, I played a few more after that with Jockey, but it wasn't until Dave Smith, actually, somebody that came in and was a bit different, came up for England, but he came in, and that's when I played as a regular for a season. That must have been 89, something like that, and that was one of my highlights, to play every week. I think the first game was against Aberdeen. Got man of the match that day, because I remember seeing Theo Selder pull one out the top corner that I'd put in. It was on Scotsport every week. Every week I used to watch on a Saturday night, thinking it was going to go in, but it didn't get. He kept getting that hunt, which was great. So I played a lot of games, but probably as well at that point, I went with Scotland to a World Cup, believe it or not.
Was that in Chile? Was that the Chile campaign?
Chile, yes. Craig Brown was in charge, Ross Maffey. I mean, again, total professional. We're dead lucky with the coaches that I worked under. We went away, and we were, if I'm being honest, a second-rate team in the sense that all the guys that were in the first team at the time didn't get to go. You know, you'd probably be talking, I think, Derek Ferguson, Ian Durant, people like that were really making a name for themselves, Rangers, plus loads of others. So we sort of, I think my position probably would have been David Robertson, but because he couldn't go and playing in the first team, it was September, October, Scotland had to pick like a second-rate team, and I mean that with the best respect. Boys like Nisbet, Billy McKinlay, imagine saying that as a second-rate team, but at that time they weren't playing in the team. Scott Crabb, you know, somebody that you'll know well for Hearts, Alan Main, Brian Welsh, Gordon McLeod. I went out there, Gary Ogilvie, who was at Dundee with me. So we went out there to Chile. We weren't expected to do anything at all, and we ended up getting to the quarter-final. We beat East Germany, as it was at that time. I've still got Matthias Zammer's shirt in the house, which is great. We then drew with Bahrain, typical Scotland. You know, we beat the European champions, which was East Germany. And it was out in Chile. It was all televised. It was just amazing when I look back. What a memory. The place called Valparaiso, Vina del Mar. We went to the first game, and the place was full of Scots flags, and there was 15,000 people, because Craig Brown, again, not just a great manager, him and Ross, they made us go around the schools and that, and so all the locals were on our side. It was absolutely incredible. But we drew with Bahrain as usual, no typical Scotland. So we went to the last game against Colombia, having to get a draw, and we ended up drawing 2-0 down, got back to 2-2, and played West Germany in the quarterfinals. I think I got booked for elbowing Andy Muller in the face. But that's my claim to fame anyway. But no, it was absolutely magnificent. We finished, as I say, we got knocked out on penalties. I did score my own penalty, and Scott Crabb missed. Hope he's not listening to this. Got Nisbet as well. But anyway, brilliant time. And I think because we'd done so well, the next under-21 squad, Craig Brown named me in it.
Right.
So that season that was talking about in '89, under Dave Smith at Dundee, I managed to get 4 Scotland under-21 caps as well, which was great. One of them was at Tannadice, and I was actually marking Didier Deschamps that night. So, you know, I think he ended up winning the Champions League as a manager and player, and ended up at Brechin. I'm not saying something went wrong there, but it wasn't quite the same.
Son, I want to talk to you about, Stevie, is it doesn't happen anymore, but in your early time at Dundee, you went on and played a couple of games for Rangers as a guest player, is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm probably going back to it, and obviously, you know, fingers crossed, we're hearing that he's not well at the time. Walter Smith was obviously a legend at Dundee United. We used to play 5-a-sides, believe it or not, against Gordon Wallace, Jim McLean, Archie, Guy Davy Nick on the goal, played for Forfar, and you know what a team they were. You know, it was Jockey, Archie, Drew Jarvie played sometimes. They were in their 40s. Whelan was like 18, 19. Walter Smith played as well. We couldn't beat them. They were absolutely. They were their managers. We were scared to beat them, but they were absolutely brilliant. But obviously, I knew Walter as well from likes of the reserve games and all that as well. So he must have rated as he spoke to Souness. They were allowed to take 2 guest players, shall we say. So I went across to Italy the first time. Played, God, it was Torino, Juventus. And I'm looking back to that team. Nizzy was in that as well. Spencer, McSweigan, Sandy Robertson, Dave McFarlane, I think Davey Kirkwood, Gus McPherson. You know, a right good Rangers team. I've still got the strip, believe it or not. I've still got the blazer. I remember going into Jockey's office and you know, basically got measured up. The next day, here comes a Rangers blazer and all that. You know, I was like, this is incredible. So yeah, went away and we won the tournament. That was in Italy, and they actually asked me back. No, I think it was France the first time, sorry. They actually asked me back in September. So I went back and played again and won that tournament as well in September. So incredible. As you say, it doesn't happen now, but it was amazing to go. I've still got the photos and that, obviously, and to go and represent a club as big as that. Peter McLeod was in charge, Jimmy Nicholl was there. The second time we went, I'll never forget, we met up on a Friday, trained across the Hyde, which I can't remember what it's called. It's now the car park.
Yep.
But we'd actually played them in the reserves the night before. But Mark Falco and that were playing for the reserves. And we beat them 5-1. And I scored, rounded Nicky Walker to score, which didn't happen too often. But anyway, goes there. Souness was absolutely raging. And I believe he told them, if they don't come back with the trophy, they're all getting freed. So, needless to say, we went to Italy and won every game as well. So, it was a great year, playing for Dundee, being away in Chile, going away with Rangers. You know, what again, you're young, you're 19, you're 20, you're not realising, you just think this is what it's all about. You're not really taking it in. But when I look back and look at the shirts that I've got and the memories that I've got, absolutely brilliant, superb. And we stayed up that year, I think, under Dave Smith, and then I think it was Gordon Wallace came in after that at Dundee. And I didn't play too many games. It was a couple of years in the reserves. Had a lot of injuries, but I got back in under Gordon. But he moved with Jockey to Dunfermline, and Ian Monroe came in, and then Simon Stainrod and Jim Duffy, and we ended up winning the league in '92. It was brilliant, absolutely great. And I think I played about 34, 35 games during that season as well. So that was, well, there's all the highlights. But I think winning the league, for the club that you've supported, and obviously it was the equivalent now of the Championship, to go back up to the Premier League was again a brilliant memory and a brilliant day. Funnily enough, we got beat by Montrose on the day, but we had beat Forth for the week before, 3-1. My good mate Paul Ritchie scored that day, and then the following week, I think we celebrated for about a week when we got promotion. So great time.
You mentioned one of your teammates there, Paul Ritchie. Who were the top players in that Dundee era that you played with?
Oh, God, I'm not just saying this. Somebody sent me a photo yesterday. No wonder it was hard to break into a team. I mean, the early ones at 86, 87, just before Jockeytown Archie Knox's team was John Brown. I mean, imagine players like that. Tosh McKinley. The goalies were Rob Geddes, Tom Carson, Jim Duffy came, Stuart Rafferty. As I said about Ray Stephen, Keith Wright. I know he's a high B, sorry about that, but just as I say, a brilliant team. Stuart Forsyth, and then evolved to Tommy Coyne and that coming in. The Jockey signed players like that, so it was really, really difficult. Just blessed with John McCormack's and that. I mean, just rolling them off because they were just absolute legends. Jim Smith, Bobby Glennie. So it was a fantastic array of talent. I'm not just saying that, and then as it evolved on, probably the team that we won the league in 92, 93, with all due respect, maybe wasn't as good as them. John McQuillan, Paul Mayers, and they're still a very good friend of mine who is a St Johnstone goalie coach, but won academy now at SCFA, and we've remained friends, like Paul Ritchie, who scored the goal that day. Grant McMartin, who I came across again later on in my Livy days, Billy Dodds, what a player he was, Stuart Beattie. The list is endless. I probably forgot.
There's a few crackers in there, Stevie, that's for sure.
Mickey Gallagher was another one. Of course, Ian McCall. How could I forget Ian McCall, who, obviously had some infamous things that he did as well that everybody knows about, and left Dundee. But again, somebody that I've, as you move on in football and coaching that United and that, still keep in touch. We still see, and anytime you see, you go back to the days and talk about other stories, other Dundee days. But to win that league was, I must admit, take the Scotland things aside, that must have been the highlight, I think, of my Dundee career.
Yeah, I mean, after Dundee, you moved over to Northern Ireland for a short spell over there, didn't you? What was the standard like over there?
Do you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. What happened was I was out for the year. It was a nightmare. 4 injuries during pre-season, actually. And Jim Duffy was still there, and Simon, and I'd been offered the contract, but that's refused it. Just a year's contract. I'd felt that I'd, maybe been worth a wee bit more, because the following year, after we won the league, I think again I played more than half the game. Steve Pittman come in, more or less took my place at left back, who was a great player, a great lad as well. And another thing I should have mentioned was Dermot Williams, who is still a very good friend of mine as well. Him and Pitts are good lads, and I think we were working at Livy until recently. But Pitts had took my place, although I was sort of the backup and played a few. But Ron Dixon was the chairman, and he sort of more or less said, look, the boys that haven't signed yet, they obviously didn't want to play for the club. I didn't want to play for any other club. I had a chance to go to Wraith under Gordon Wallace, and I didn't go, and I wasn't even playing. I should have probably went under Jimmy Nicholl. Or I think it was Jimmy Nicholl, yeah. But I stayed at Dundee, a mistake. But anyway, the following year, I was out for a whole year. I had 4 operations. I was still at Dens as in training, trying to get fit. They were great, looked after us, trying to get us fit. And then Dundee went away for a pre-season tour at Ireland, and Jim Duffy, who's a friend as well, knew that I wouldn't be quite fit to get back in Dundee's team. But they played Coleraine. There was loads of Scotsmen there. Phoned me up. I was like, Coleraine, never heard of it. I think my pal Paul Hitchie says, Stevie, you'll love it. It's the equivalent of the Irish Blackpool, you know what I mean? I thought, oh, that sounds good. But a boy in my day. But anyway, went over there for a wee trial under a manager called Felix Healy. Didn't realise again, I mean, I'll put him up there with the jockey squads and that of this world. He was a Northern Ireland international. Felix was there, more or less offered me a contract after the first game. It was a friendly game. And boys like Mark McWalter were there, Paul Kinnaird, who a man of many clubs. And there was a few other guys that Derek Cook and that had been from that. But Mark was my mate. I kent Mark for Arbroath and St Mirren days, same age as me. So we hooked up together and I signed a 2-year contract. Went great. And the standard was actually, it was hard to say. I mean, I came back to Livy and we'll get to that. It was probably somewhere about that. We obviously won the 3rd division, but you'd look upon it somewhere there. They weren't full time, the teams. I was training full time. I would just fly over on a Thursday. I used to get left in to Neil McCann, actually, to Preston Airport, go and train on a Thursday night, play on the Saturday, and I'm a right homeboy, I must admit, you know. I didn't like being out of Dundee. Get slagged for going to Broy Ferry, but I used to get the 6:10 flight home every time. Actually,
what, on the Saturday night after the game?
Right after the game, they would get a taxi. They would look after me. They would get us a taxi right after the game. I'll be honest, I went home with my strip on once just to make sure that I would get in. So, and there was boys like Tony Shepherd and Lindsay Hamilton that put it down. So it was a decent standard. It was an eye opener. I'm not gonna lie. I was actually just talking to my brother yesterday. Met him outside the house and we were reminiscing about the time. Obviously, my mum and dad and my brothers and I used to come and see us at Dundee, but I'd been over in Ireland playing for the best part of that year. So my brother and his wife and my mum and dad came across to see me. And it was good because we played on Saturday and played on the Monday. So Saturday, playing against Portadown away, had an absolute nightmare. The man was Martin, Joey Cunningham, never forget. He scored 2. So I thought, at least I've got Monday night to redeem myself and show my mum and dad that I've not went back that much. Played Cliftonville, which was like, you know, with a religious divide and whatever. Let's just say they didn't get on too well. Lost 2-0 and I got sent off. So it wasn't the best trip in the world for my mum and dad. Worse than that, there was almost petrol bombs and brother's car was outside we were stuck in the dressing room for about 2 hours. There was a massive riot after the game. So when I got home, I got the ferry home that night and my dad subtly said to us, is it not about time you come home from Northern Ireland? But I think I can't it's not that he was sending off, I think it was to do with other things. Yeah. But Kenny Shields came in and again a very good manager. But I think Kenny was more to do with, you know, I think he wanted the local lads to get a chance rather than boys like myself flying from elsewhere. But we had a great time, you know. I really enjoyed playing against Linfield and playing, you know, I scored a few goals for Coleraine and I still go back, believe it or not. I've been back 3 or 4 times. It's a magnificent, you know, place with Giants Causeway and all that as well. I've been back for a few weddings, believe it or not, the Limavady. And I went back not long ago just to have a look at the showgrounds that obviously that's the home pitch. And it was still the same kit man. And right away, Cuddle, Soupy it was called, obviously Campbell's Soup. So he was like, Soupy, how you doing? Couldn't believe it. 20 years ago, Mayor. And he still remembered me. So it was only a year there. Although I'd signed a 2-year, that's when I had to sort of wrangle about the contract with Kenny. I mean, they hard feelings at all. I saw Kenny years after that when he was over at Killie and that. And then came back to Livy, which was great.
Yeah, I mean, when you joined Livy, they were still quite a new club, weren't they? Obviously, Meadowbank Thistle moved to Livingston, rebranded. Yeah. What was it like going into a new established club?
It was amazing. It was brilliant. And actually, as I say, I'd still training at Dundee, even in my Coleraine days, so still had a great connection there. And Duff had sort of mentioned that he might sign us again, but I don't think I could have. With my knee problems, I think it suited me to maybe only train 2 or 3 days a week at the most, you know. And even Livy were great with that as well. But at the time, I remember coming back, training at Dundee, and going into that season, Livingston had actually just become the new team for Meadowbank. It was Bill Hunter that was the mastermind behind that, if I'm right in saying that. And it wasn't until the January that I managed to wrangle my way out of my contract and sign for Livy. So I wasn't a fit, but I hadn't played for about 4 or 5 months there. But obviously that was the time that Livingston were just starting to be the new team. And drum up support and all that as well. So I came in January, and Ayr United tried to sign us. Gordon Dalziel was the manager there. But myself and a good friend of mine, Ray Farmingham at Dundee, we came down to speak to Laois. And once you've spoke to Laois, you're not going to sign for anybody else. You know what I mean? Ayr were actually the league above. We were obviously the bottom division 3 at the time. And just looking around the place, and just Jinky, that's Ray Farmingham, he'd worked with Laois, obviously, at Dunfermline in the early years. So he told me about him. I wasn't disappointed, as much as I loved to work with Gordon Dalziel as well. Horrible, because I don't like saying no to people, but I had to phone Gordon and say, look, I'm not coming. He says, no problem, you know, go and enjoy it, Livy. And that's what I did. Signed for Livingston, new club, knew quite a few of the guys there as well, which was good. Graham Harvey, somebody I hadn't mentioned, Sorek was a massive Dundee legend as well, Harv. So Harv was there, and I went to Livy, and yeah, it was strange because we used to go and almost canvass support, you know, because obviously they didn't have a massive support. So we used to actually go into the schools and do a wee bit of coaching, and it was a bit of a hybrid situation where we would train Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I think, the full-timers. We would then train Tuesday and Thursday night with the part-timers, which the majority were. And in between times, George McNeil, Livy's assistant, you know, the famous sprinter, and that, and absolute legend when it comes to the after-dinner speaking as well.
I was just going to say that. I think he attended our clubs after dinner speaking a couple of years ago. Superb.
Absolutely brilliant, you know. And again, he got us as fit as, you know, speedballs. I'd never done that in my life. We did a bit of weights, a bit of running. Tuesday night was a hell of a night on the track, you know, with the boys. But I felt really fit, really felt that Livy really took us on board as well, you know, because I was late in coming in. Ray didn't sign, actually. Ray, I think Ray went to fourth or something like that time, didn't he? But I was the only one to come and sign for Livy. It took us a few games because I think Laois was thinking, what the hell have I signed here? Thought he was a good player, I remember at Dundee. But it took me a while to get fit. And I just absolutely loved it there. And we went on, obviously, to win that division, which is 25 years ago, I think, this coming May. Rob Douglas, still a good friend of mine, and there was a wee bit instrumental. I think Laois was happy with me getting Rob to Dundee, because going into schools, as I was saying to you with Livy, sort of got us my buzz for coaching. We were doing a bit of community stuff and drawing it up. We took a few sessions, and then I started taking the S-forms at Dens through John McCormack and Ray Farmingham. So I think that's what got me into coaching, the Livy days. Laois, if I'm being honest, would sometimes say to me, like, you would always be doing this, that, and whatever, opening restaurants and doing this. Can you take training? I was only 28, but I started to love it. And, you know, that's probably what made me go into the coaching side. But a great team. I mean, I could rattle off some Bowen here, for Grant Tierney, Stuart Williamson. You know, as I say, Rob Douglas in the goal. We had Horace Stout and Dave Lane, two guys that came from Barbados to play at Livingston. It was brilliant. A good friend of mine, Lee Bailey, who was at Brechin there up to a few years ago, was a striker. We young Jason. We had it was a right good team, honestly. We had that played
And what was Laois like playing under? I mean, obviously he's a round big character in Scottish football.
What can I say about him? He's we used to go in here team talk at 1:45, and by 2:15 you were actually sore laughing, but you were also, it was like, honestly, it was like an after dinner speech, but there was always that theme going through it that you would just go out and play for him. You know, he was a good coach as well. Don't get me wrong, he was a good coach, but he wasn't up there tactically and that way. The Jockey Scott's actually not said as well. But it was funny. I had a wee talk for somebody recently. It was a Kansan karate thing, and I remember just writing down other coaches. It was about communication and that, and teamwork. And I looked at other coaches that had the privilege of working with, my playing days and my coaching days, and Laois was probably the best communicator that I've ever worked under, honestly. And I remember saying in that sort of, just for a laugh, obviously, in that wee talk that I did, that he made you feel like Lionel Messi. I'm not joking you. You went out there and you actually felt you probably played like Lionel Richie, but you actually were out there. Brilliant, just knowing that he was right behind you. And that's how I think that team spirit, and he's done it with so many teams, that it was just a joy to work. And obviously, you had Ian McNeil, I think it is. Ian has done a bit of the scouting with Hearts and all that as well. And Corky was another guy that helped out. He played, I think, at the club at Meadowbank. So they were helping out with the part-timers, and obviously had George as well. So they get a great backroom staff behind them. Roy Baines was the goalkeeping coach. There was just a great atmosphere, and I came for Laois. And when I meet any of the players now, that I meet Rab a lot, obviously Rab Douglas, and people like Harv and that, we speak all the time on Facebook. And Alan Lawrence as well, he's another one from the Dundee days. But if we're mentioning about Livy, Laois just comes up and the team talks, and he was just amazing, honestly. He was just an absolute brilliant manager to play for, and an all-round good guy as well, But
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say a bad word about Jim Leishman. Don't think I've ever heard anybody.
Because you just want to go out and play for them, and we won that league, and it was again a brilliant. It's not too often that you end up winning leagues. I was lucky Dundee and Livy. We nearly won it the year after to Hamilton, and they picked us to. I think we finished third place, and that was the end of me at Livy. But we were very close second year as well. We led for a long, long time. I think I talked about my pal Paul Ritchie. He went to Hamilton after coming back from Hong Kong and scored about 40 goals for Hamilton. If you hadn't done that, I honestly think we would have won the league, So, but Laois was just a joy to play for, and the funniest man I've ever met. And it's respect. It's not just a laugh. He's not just a jolly green giant. He's got a football knowledge as well, and he knows how to get players playing for him. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Rab Douglas and how you played a role in getting him a move to Dundee. So you're responsible for the big man, aren't you?
Well, maybe not responsible, but I think Laois. I remember I was in at Dundee, obviously taking the S forms by that time, and Dundee were looking for the goalie. Billy Thompson was the goalkeeping coach. John McCormack was the manager. Funnily enough, Ed then signed for Brechin, and Rab. The club had almost went bankrupt, I think, at one time. We all moved on, but then they got taken over by new owners. So Ed signed a 3-year contract, got right into the coaching at 30, I think maybe about 29, 30 by that time, right into the coaching at Dundee, part-time, which ended up full-time. And obviously, when the goalkeeping situation was mentioned there, so I said to the manager and to Tomo, look, you'll not believe this, we're playing Livy and being Cook Up on Tuesday. Rab Douglas will be playing. I said, he's like Schmeichel, because that's what he reminded me of. And I love playing with him. He was number 3 to begin with. I think it was Ellie and the guy Hollis Stein was telling me about from Barbados. They played before Rab. A bricky, 50 quid a week. Couldn't get again for Livy. And then, of course, he got into Livy's team for the 2 years. He was absolutely outstanding. The size of him. I'll hate to tell you, I hate to throw this one in. Rab's favourite story, it's a true story. He used to get so peed off with me. I would be standing on his post, corners against. That was my position because I wasn't very good in the air. I wasn't very big. So there was no point in me marking anybody. We left that to the Stuart Williamsons and Grant Tierney's of this world because they were brave enough to do it. But Rab was so fed up that every time I stood on his post, I would drink his water bottle. So we're playing Berwick Rangers one day, and as usual, running back, going to them, stood on the front post, turned to Rab, because he's a scary guy, you see the size of him. Walked to her, picked up his water bottle. I'm looking at him thinking, what's he smiling at? Took the biggest drink, it was a hot day, wasn't long before we won the league. Took the biggest drink ever, swig. He'd actually filled it with whiskey. The bugger. Yeah, true story. Never went out the second half steaming, But anyway, Rab, his wee boy wasn't well at the time, I remember that. So he was in York Hill. Livy had offered him a contract. Obviously, their manager, Dundee's manager, couldn't speak to him. He wasn't allowed to. So I phoned Rab. The most important thing was Murray being well. Obviously, he said that. I said, well, look, great club. We'll be back in the Premier League soon. The offer's there. But Tomo and John McCormack had come to see him in that game. I was telling him about them now playing for Brechin. And believe it or not, Rab flogged the goal. And I'm going the next day to Dens thinking, no, they're going to say to me, Stevie, don't ever, recommend the goalie again. But right away, Tomo went, apart from that, what a goalie, the size on the frame, I'll work with him. And then it just got down to negotiations and Dundee got him. And then I think a couple of years later, he's after selling for £1 million. So we've remained good friends. Rab married Debbie Marr, who's the daughter of Peter, who was the owner at Dens when I was in my coaching days there. They actually got married on Dens, believe it or not, in about marquee and a great day. My big brother, now my family are Dundee daft, but my brother plays in a band. So he eventually got to play on Dens. He didn't get to play football because he wasn't good enough. But he got his wish to play on Dens for Robin and Debbie's wedding. So that was a brilliant night and a great memory. But what a goalie, what a boy. Still at Arbroath, still as enthusiastic ever. I think he played recently at Hampden at 46.
I think that's right, aye. I think I've seen that, aye.
Absolutely ridiculous. But no, I mean, I'm not saying it was instrumental. I had a wee hand in it. And
that's good. That's good enough for me. That's definitely instrumental.
He's not happy with me, that's for sure.
Moving on as well, like you said, you finished your playing career at Brechin. You returned back to Dundee as a coach. What was it like returning back to your boyhood club this time on the coaching side of it?
Yeah, funnily enough, I mean, I'd been there about 5 years part-time during my Livy and Brechin days, taking, I think, the first sort of S forms as they were at that time, boys like Lee Wilkie, Lee Mayer, and then they would graduate up to the under-18s with Ray Farmingham, who again, I learned loads from one of my good mates. He's going to be 60 this year, God, we're getting old. And Jockey had come back, so he was in my heroes. He's probably the best coach that I've worked with. So Jockey was the manager during my early spell. So it was great that Barry Smith and that were there again, a good pal, but just an absolute legend of a boy. We'd sort of Dundee in the blood. And went back there, worked away, and then I got the offer full time just as I'd actually got injured, done my cruciate, and told to the Brechin physio that I couldn't play again. It was at the end of my 3 years anyway. But I actually took over Carnoustie Junior for just a wee spell. So I was playing for them that I'd done it, but I didn't actually play any games for them or manage them because I went into Dundee full time. Jinky moved up to 21s, which it was at that time. I moved into the 18s, under 18s. My first youth team were people like Stephen Robb and that, who went on to have a very good career. But it was great. The funny thing was, at the same time, Jockey got pinned. It's not funny, but I think Jockey's got the record at the moment of 5 P45s for Dundee. And he keeps going back. He keeps going back. Jinky's on 4, I think I'm on 3. So it's just football, as they say. But Ivano Benetti came in, if you remember that time.
Yes. I actually recently interviewed Gavin Ray, who spoke very in depth about the Benetti boys. Aye.
Well, he would. And Gavin was one of our boys as well that came to the youth system. Still a good friend out in Australia there.
That's right.
Still speak to Gavin on a regular basis. Absolute legend, though, boy. And what a player. Again, one that, when I think back to my coaching days and look at players that, I'm not going to say he was the talent, he was talented, but there was a lot more talent. But see Gavin's dedication to the game. That's what got him the career that he had, going to Rangers, playing for Scotland. Absolutely brilliant. And being a Dundee legend twice as well. He was always an Aberdeen fan, coming through there. Never puts his hand in his pockets either. But great boy, apart from that. So yeah, what a squad that was. We had that sprinkling of Scottish people, but you can imagine what it was like. I mean, I'm the youth team coach, and there was days that I'd be training for Brechin or Ravenelli because he'd tell me Ivano, or they'd be in Europe and he was suspended. We'd go and play practice matches with Claudio Caniggia playing against her. It was just ridiculous, Some of the players, Caballero and Namzadzi, they were just absolutely on a different planet. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And we'd like to think that we were a very successful youth team bringing through Stephen Millen, Dave Mackay, Wilkie, Mayer, Gavin Ray, Jamie Langfield. So again, there was a real sort of conveyor belt at that time of talent that were brought through, even going years later to Paul Dixon, Scott Roberts and Kev McDonald, as I say, the aforementioned Stephen Robb. So we really had a good core of players getting in that team. But again, the foreigners and the World Cup winners, and that was just outrageous. Claudio Canizzi used to come in for a cup of coffee with me and Jinky after training. I used to have to pinch Jinky and say, "Are we having a coffee with Diego Maradona's best mate?" It was just ridiculous, but it was great. I was just right into the coaching at that time. Obviously, the youth team, the 21s it was, I would sit on the bench with Jinky and learn so much that way with him. There wasn't a split. I wouldn't call it a split, but there was obviously language barriers and all that. They brought in a lot of players out with, so there was a wee bit of a divide, but it was successful. And then, of course, in the end, we ended up in administration.
I was going to say that to you, Stevie. Yeah, were you involved with administration? What was that like at the club?
It was horrendous. It was seeing some of my best pals like Paul Mayers, Robbie Rayside, the guy Kev Leeds at the SFA now, but he was community. Kenny Cameron, who was my absolute mentor. Kenny was in charge of our youth system. He'd been at United with Graham Livingston, who I'd meet later as I go to United. Kenny was like Jim McLean, I suppose I could say, but his football knowledge was phenomenal. He got sacked, during administration as well. So I think it was only me, Jinky, and Duff as manager almost left. We are a skeleton squad. A lot of people think me and Jinky were been during the administration. We actually survived it. But it was a horrible day. We watched 25 young kids, and of course some real stars like Caballero and that as well. But I'm not going to say we didn't feel sorry for them, but we knew they would get another club. Others had basically their legs cut off, that didn't really recover from that. I'm not blaming anybody at all. A horrible day. We're just tearing the room. Duff was amazing and how he dealt with it. And a guy, Jim Connor, at that time, who was one of Peter's right-hand men. And it was really a difficult day and a difficult time to then, pick yourself up. But I never forget, believe it or not, playing Hearts. And the Hearts fans were amazing. Some United fans had the bucket suit, and one of our stars, who was used to them, Bobby Lynn, scored a goal that almost saved the club. They were in so much debt, and Lenny scored that goal to win 1-0 at Hearts. That was his first game. He's now starting for Arbroath, but what a player he was, and still is. And really, what a goal that was! What an important goal for Dundee. So a difficult time to see.
Yeah.
People in the office, people, cleaners, your pals, just losing their job through that. It was really, really difficult.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
I was never the same, I must admit that.
Obviously, Stevie, you're huge on football development. You had spells up at Inverness as well before you returned back and made that cross over the road to Tannadice. How was that hop, skip and a jump over the road?
Well, obviously being a Dundee fan, I managed to play in 8 derbies, I think. I think we only won 2 of them. Dodgy scored a penalty once. I think we won 3-0 once and I made a goal at Tannadice. Graham Harvey scored that one. And Rob Shannon, who also crossed the Great Divide. So there was a lot of players that had done it. There was a lot of coaches that had done it. The minute I went to Inverness, because obviously lost my job at Dundee, that was a hard one. I'm not going to lie. That really hit us hard in the heart because it was my club. I think I was more gutted losing my job as a coach than as a player, because I felt I was worth more as a coach than a player, believe it or not. I felt through the system of Kenny and Jinky, produced, I think we had 45 players got on that first team. So after administration, we go and get relegated at Livy, ironically. We draw 1-1, but that's us relegated. And on the Monday, we spoke to Jim Duffy and he more or less confirmed that. And I think it was a Wednesday that Peter came in and that was us moving on. Thankfully, Craig Brewster had spoken to me. I was dead lucky. Craig had spoken to me to see if I wanted to go up to Inverness. I did in terms of football. I didn't because I'm such a homeboy and just wanted to stay in Dundee. I found that I have been away for him a week with my wife and that, and the bairns. But we did it and I used to get him some weekends. Magnificent part of the country. An absolute brilliant club. Again, met great friends here. Scott Kelleher, who's now the number 2, and he's not been well. And obviously, for what John Robertson going through just now, the 2 of them are not at the club at the moment. But I text Scott recently. He was my number 2. He's now progressed up to be the number 2 to John. At the moment, obviously, Neil's in there just now, but I still keep in touch with him. Great friend of mine. Danny McDonald was up there, Charlie Christie. So I made great friends. Was there for 6 months, but every single buddy in Dundee says to me, Stevie, Brewster will be the next manager of United, and you'll be coming to United. And obviously I says, wouldn't go for £1 million. I'm a Dundee fan. So, Friday the 13th of January, I did come. So maybe not a good day. Obviously, they've done compensation. Craig says to me, I've been impressed with what you've done the last 6 months to the youth system. Will you come with us to United? And I thought, will my family speak to us anymore? Massive Dundee fans, have been for years, still are. And I'm going to be, draped in tangerine. What the hell goes on there? So I did. Came down, joined a brilliant club. Again, great memories. Graham Livingston was in charge of the youth setup. The players that he brought through were absolutely phenomenal. Went in there with Craig, Peter Davidson, Malky. It didn't quite work out. I offered my resignation with Craig when he got the sack. I think it was only 6 to 8 months in. Craig, being the absolute gentleman that he is, made sure that I did not do it, was absolutely adamant, which speaks volumes for the man. I found it hard to begin with because I was this boy for Dundee. I'd actually took Dave Bowman's job, who's an absolute United legend, a great guy as well. So you're like, oh my God, and a Hearts man as well, as you can. Probably Hearts' youngest captain.
Aye.
But Bo was one of the first boys to phone me and say, Stevie, listen, great set of boys, great club. Want to wish you all the best. I'm not happy, I'm gutted that I got pinned through my job. But somebody like you, going and do your best, So I appreciated that. That made it easier. And I went in there, met people like Tony Docherty and that. Great, fantastic coaches. But obviously, Doc was only wanting to stay for the old regime, I think. I got another ex-teammate of mine, Gordon Chisholm, that I didn't mention earlier when we won the league. Sorry, Chiz, for that one. He was instrumental because he'd replaced Tim Duffy. But Chiz and Colley had moved on, obviously, and Craig come in, took the job. It just didn't work out for Craig. Maybe too early for him, I think. He was done well at Inverness. He was still playing, but he broke his leg or got a bad injury. The fact he couldn't play, I don't think helped either. So didn't quite work out, and along came Mr. Craig Levine, who used to. And, they really turned the club upside down. I didn't expect to be there because you never know. It's a hard one when a new management team come in and they want to bring their own staff. And you sort of felt like you were on trial with Levine and Houston, but we struck up great relationships. I always worked hard, always did 80, 90 hours as a youth coach. And I would never look back and think that was the wrong thing to do. It's just the way it is. You don't see enough of your family, I'll admit that. You've got to put your heart and soul into the job. But I'd like to think, the next 10 years, obviously as well, working under different managers, different coaches coming along like Gary Kirk, as you say. I mean, the highlight for me is the young boys that I helped bring through.
Yeah, I was going to say that because obviously Dundee United have had quite a few high calibre young players come through. Who were the ones in the academy that really caught your eye?
Well, when I first got there, you had Gary Kenneth, you had David Goodwillie, that I wouldn't have taken any credit for. They were already in the youth team and breaking into the first team, that was Bo and Livy and the previous people there. But I did work with them to begin with. But when I look back at the squad that were coming up, I got a bit excited at the Johnny Russells and people like that. I was still keeping in touch with Johnny. I'd like to think that, well, he says that I played a massive part in his development over the next couple of years. I mean, what a talent he was, incredible. But there was a host, Keith Watson, who, bar for injury, he's obviously up at Ross County now, but Craig Levine had actually said the best young boy that he'd seen. Now, everybody thought was Goodwillie at that time, obviously. But Keith just had so many injuries. He still had a good career, but would have been a fantastic career. So, yeah, I started to sort of, work with Brian Grant came in, Dave Bowman came back, with a good setup and a good bunch of people. Scott Thompson had taken over for, it was Rab Geddes actually was a goalkeeping coach, but then Steve Banks came in again, an ex-Hearts man as well. With Levine's situation, Gary Kirk would take the reserves, so I'd go along with Kirky often, but I'd predominantly worked with the youth team. So we brought through boys like Ryan Dow, etc. But I think as time went on, Stuart Armstrong was one that obviously I'd sourced in Inverness days, played a wee cared or two to get away from Inverness for nothing, and then 2 years of developing them, pushed them on the first team, and then of course look at them now, Scotland and Southampton Premier League, etc. You then had your Ryan Calls and John Suter, Harry Suter, Ryan Dow, we were very successful, I must admit. Scotty Fraser, Jamie Robson, Jamie's still in the team now, still keep in touch with him, and it's the biggest part for me is the relationships that you get with these guys. You go back to the ones that I spoke about earlier, Paul Dixon and Scott Robertson, sort of took for 12 and 13. Like Stuart, I've got their last taps at the Play at United. We've got their last, or the first Scotland tops and things like that. And it's their memories, and they're worth anything than money. You know what I mean? They're just absolutely magnificent. And also the relationships that you build up with these players, and it's great. It's brilliant. And
it must be a huge sense of pride knowing that you helped these guys get to the level they're at now.
Totally. But there's a lot of people that used to get embarrassed with the amount of sort of respect and credit that I got for it. But I've always been a coach that knows that it's down to the guy themselves and the people around about you as well. I was always working within good systems. I'm not going to lie, of course I played my part, yes, definitely. But there's a lot of other people did the same, and the guys themselves, you've got to take it on board. One of my favourite sayings is that, and I'll not say who the player was, but it was Craig Levine called me earlier once to tell us to stop coaching somebody. And as you could hear, David, my voice is still like this. I'm just getting back from one-on-ones, believe it or not, with the kids at SCFA. But he says to me, Stevie, keep going with Johnny Russell. Yeah. He says, but don't waste your breath with, and I'll no name him. And I'm like, oh, I've got the coach in my eye, you know what I mean? It's like I can't pick one or two. He says, he doesn't take incoming calls. And what he meant by that is obviously just, I'd never heard that phrase before. I always laugh when I hear it. But as he was saying that, it's down to the players to take on what you're saying, what you're showing them, what you're trying to teach them, whatever that may be. And there's some that just can't do it, but there's ones that are so receptive. And that's the ones you love working with. And what you love is just sitting back sometimes and looking, whether it be in the papers, all the ones that you've had the privilege of coaching, and especially, in terms of the football side, the ones that are playing at the top level, especially when it's a Scotland game, and you can see them out there, and you always get a text from them here and there. It's great, it's brilliant. It's a privilege to have worked with them and win the Champions of the world.
Nice one. I mean, you went on to coach at Brechin as well.
This might be a long-winded answer, if you don't mind, David. Okay. I wouldn't say it's something that I hadn't done before, because a lot of the times as a youth team coach, there would be players training with you that had maybe been surplus to requirements for the manager. They might be coming back for injury. So you did train senior players sometimes with your youth team, if that makes sense, David. Hopefully you can hear me okay on that. And then obviously going part-time at Brechin, I went in as the number 3 first. Darren Dodds and Lee Bailey. Obviously Lee was my teammate at Livy. He was the assistant manager. Darren was the manager. We were obviously Inverness and United together. So that's how the Brechin thing came about, albeit also because it was a club like Dundee that I've got so much, and United, so much time for and so much heart for, because I played for them years ago, and they're great people, and a lot of them are still on the board and still are on the board, believe it or not. So went in there, and to be fair, Bale said to me, he says, Stevie, you'll not believe it. We'll get 3 hours, 1.5 hours on a Tuesday night, 1.5 hours on a Thursday night. You'll not get to coach the way you normally coach, because you've got 2 years, 3 years to coach a young kid who's maybe 15, 16 to get him in the first team. You're coaching him individually. Suddenly, you're trying to get a team to win on the Saturday, but you're also trying to keep them fit, so they do a lot of fitness work. So it differs immensely, David, obviously. Still enjoyed it. First year was great. We go up to the championship, and then obviously the last couple of years has been great. Gutted that we'll go down twice. Very unfortunate, but at the end of the day, that's the way it is. The table doesn't lie. So we'll go down twice. Yeah. I have a spell as assistant manager. I had been off the manager's job a couple of times, same with another couple of clubs. But I never saw myself as a manager. Still didn't see myself as a manager. I love coaching. Coaching's the thing that I love doing. And I think the last lockdown, when I was coaching the young kids again, doing one-on-ones and group sessions, I just thought, this is my future. We'd opened up SCFA. We've got about 300 kids in there. And I thought, I'm away a lot, a couple of nights starting Brechin. It wasn't that we weren't successful. I was gutted to leave the club where I did, but I couldn't do both. I couldn't do the coaching the kids and other travelling that was doing me Brechin. Saturdays away to Elgins from that. It was just too much. I'm 53 now. Like a bit of family time, if I'm being honest.
Quite right, mate.
So I had to give it up. Still enjoyed it. Still put everything into it. But the difference was phenomenal, if I'm being honest, between coaching the young kids and obviously going into first team players. I'd like to think, that I gained the respect because the texts and phone calls that I got when I left, and any time any player left, again, as I said to you earlier, the relationships that I built up with them, that's everything to me. And I still love watching, whether it be an Alan Troutman scoring for Alloa that I only helped for a year at Brechin. We still hear that bond, it's brilliant. And Andy Jackson, the move on, a Dale Hilson, our brother or whatever, and Robert Thompson at Alloa. The guys that I've had the privilege of coaching that have been with you. Okay, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So
I was going to say,
Brechin and only have that short space of time to coach them, and you're really coaching the team rather than coaching the individual. So hopefully that answers the question.
No, definitely.
It's never easy with me. It's a long-term answer with me most of the time. So hopefully that's okay.